Hello everyone, my name is Vanessa. The name of this channel is called Gnostic Knowledge. And what I am doing on this channel is sharing the knowledge of gematria. Gematria is the encoding of numbers within our letters. Every word we speak has a numerical value. And the more you learn about gematria, the more clearly you'll see how this alphanumeric code works. The way that I am sharing this knowledge is via two books written by Zachary Hubbard. The name of his first book is entitled Letters and Numbers, which I have completed reading on this channel, and you can go and listen to chapter 1 through chapter 22 of his book. And in his latest book, Number Games, 9/11 to Coronavirus, I have completed reading from chapter 1 to chapter 17. And this is the gentleman that wrote the book. And in this session, I will begin reading in chapter 18. And at the end of this session of reading, I will let you know how to get both of Zachary K. Hubbard's books so that you too can find out what gematria is and learn it. Because every person on this earth should know what gematria is and how it affects our lives and how we are living out a manufactured reality. I mean, not what you do in your own life, but anything that moves the masses, anything that has to do with our government, the powers that shouldn't be. It is all a script, and they are using the scriptures to do it, to pull it off. So, with that said, I will begin reading in chapter 18, and it is entitled, I Can't Breathe and George Floyd's Killing on 38th Street. Okay. On May 26, 2020, mainstream media captured the mind's eye of the masses in record time with a disturbing story and video footage reportedly from one day earlier of the killing of 46-year-old George Floyd by 44-year-old police officer Derek Chauvin on the 44th parallel north in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As you'll recall, the word execution has gematria of 44 and 46, pairing with how kill and officer equate to 44, and similar to how sacrifice sums to 46, as well as chaos and ordo ab chao, the latter being the Latin motto for order out of chaos. In the case of 46-year-old George Floyd, he had the double-headed eagle of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry tattooed on his chest. That is often adorned with the words, in capital letters, Ordo Ab Chao, with the ab, A-B, around the neck of the two-headed bird, the part of George Floyd's body that was kneeled on by Officer Chauvin, and the part having a simple English value of 33, reminding us that the rioting in response to the killing of George Floyd began on East 33rd Street in Minneapolis, similar to how the beating of Rodney King by the LAPD, an acronym equating to 33, just like the words police and race war, happened on March 3rd, 1991, emphasis on 3-3, March 3rd, third month, 3-3, third month, third day, okay? Emphasis on 3-3. The same day in history, Trayvon Martin was buried. March 3rd, 2012, 21 years later. As you have learned, the number 33 relates to Kundalini energy rising up the 33 bones of the human vertebrae. And where Kundalini equates to 58, so does Derek Chauvin, Benjamin Crump, the Floyd's family lawyer. He's everybody's lawyer that gets killed in the news that's black, and he hasn't won one case that I've seen. Just BS. But anyway, where Kundalini equates to 58, so does Derek Chauvin, Benjamin Crump, Freemasonry, fraternal, and secret society. In light of the number 58, let us not forget its relationship with 33, reminding us that Freemasonry, federal, order, and secrecy equate to 33, and all in the same cipher as police, the Pythagorean cipher, okay? And to get back to the point of how the story captured the mind's eye of the masses quickly, recall that pineal, like as in pineal gland, pineal equates to 33. And at the same time, fraternal order of police equates to 119, the same as George Floyd, along with the phrase all-seeing eye, something that is clearly part of the design of the motto for the Fraternal Order of Police, or FOP. If you care to look it up, the logo for the Fraternal Order of Police, and they do have the all-seeing eye in their logo because I've seen it. Okay, speaking of which, it was April 29th, the 119th day of the year in non-leap years in 1992, when the police were acquitted for the vicious beating of Rodney King, also captured on camera, something that was unprecedented at the time, triggering rioting, especially in Compton, equating to 33 with Pythagorean and being located on the 33rd parallel north. And in light of the number 119 list we've compiled, please don't overlook that it is 911 in reverse, the number we dial for police in the U.S., as well as emergency services. In the case of George Floyd's tattoo, if you want to see it for yourself, search for the image of the porn star named Floyd the Landlord. I kid you not, because that is the stage name of George Floyd in his scene with adult actress Kimberly Brinks. And regarding her name, part of me wonders if it is an accident that he was chosen to film this scene with this specific actress, whose name has gematria of 93, same as Minneapolis, Minnesota, the city on the 93rd Meridian West where Floyd was killed, and reminding us of the rituals with Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, who both went by names other than their birth names, and who both were assigned names equating to 93, something that becomes more interesting when you realize they met only one time in history, March 26, 1964, a date with 93 numerology, and where 93 is the reflection of 39, the age both Martin and Malcolm died at. Keep in mind, the number 39 also corresponds with the Pythagorean gematria of George and Gemini, since this killing came in the Twin Cities in the time of Gemini, the twins. And in light of George Floyd reportedly being killed by a 44-year-old officer on the 44th parallel north, let us not forget that both MLK and Malcolm X were killed on dates with clear connections to 44. And in Malcolm X's case, his assassin's name, Thomas Hagen, equated to 44, and he received 44 years in prison. For even more familiar numbers, the porn name Floyd the Landlord has gematria of 76, the same as slave, Negro, and blues, reminding us that the Million Man March was October 16, 1995, the day leaving 76 days left in the year, and at the same time, the phrase order from chaos, which is sometimes used instead of order out of chaos, it equates to 76. And let us not forget Acts 7:6 either. Furthermore, both Floyd the Landlord and order from chaos equates to 77. Reminding us of the ritual of Flight 77 on September 11, 2001, as well as the gematria of both police officer and police department equating to 77, the same as September 11th, written as words, September 11th, and World Trade Center. Tying this together further is what we have already covered, and that is George Floyd equating to 119 with simple English is similar to the date of September 11th when written as 11/9. Plus, the most crucial reported fact of all is that, and okay, I'm going, sorry. Plus, the most crucial reported fact of all, and that is Officer Chauvin was on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Not unlike how it was reported that at 8:46 a.m., Flight AA-11 became the first plane to hit the World Trade Center on September 11, 2001. And then, as if the riddle wasn't already made clear enough by the cabal, they set the pre-trial date for Derek Chauvin's accused murder of George Floyd for September 11, 2020, on the 19-year anniversary for the infamous attack. Of course, Floyd equates to 19 and 26, the same as chaos, the same as knee, and it is for this reason the footage of the killing of George Floyd was saved for the 26th of May to spark the chaos that it did on the same day. Keep in mind, 8:46 a.m. is the 526th minute of the day, like the date 5/26. Oh my goodness. Okay, adding to the riddle, both Floyd and riot equate to 26, and as we know, 26 is the God number, and what we have observed through the worldwide response to the video of George Floyd needlessly having his life taken away from him by the authority figure through the protesting and rioting is that the cabal can move the people of the world in ways that only God or even gods should be able to. Then again, we've been witnessing this for some length of time, including the incident on April 29th, the 119th day of the year, when the police were acquitted for the beating of Rodney King, setting off severe rioting in one of the world's largest cities, Los Angeles, California. As a reminder, Rodney King equates to 59 with Pythagorean, the number corresponding with the simple English values of slave, Negro, and blues. Furthermore, his birthday is April 2nd, or 4/2, and his father was born in 1942 and died at age 42 in the infamous year of 1984. And if you have read my first book, you know about the repetitive nature of bringing the numbers 42 and 59 together in national headlines involving black people, numbers that represent the gematria of slavery and slave, respectively, and reminding us further that Black History Month, February, sums to 42, and in non-leap years, it ends on the 59th day of the year. And further still, Motown was established on the 42nd parallel north in Detroit in the year 1959, emphasis on 59, and that in 2020, the 42nd pick of the NFL draft was Laviska Shenault Jr., and his name is spelled Laviska Shenault, Laviska Shenault Jr., equating to 59, with Pythagorean in the most recent of many related draft rituals where mostly white wealthy men bid and trade men that are often of darker complexions, if you catch my drift. It was for this same reason that on May 9th, or 5/9, you likely read the stories about the deaths of Little Richard, as well as the CEO of Motown, who died at 59, Andre Harrell, and who were both black entertainers. In the case of Harrell, it was reported in the news. Let me get this straight. In the case of Harrell, it was reported the news of his death was broken at Club Quarantine, equating to 59. Okay, so let me reread that because that might just be a little off. In the case of Harrell, it was reported in the news His death, that is just, forgive me if I'm messing this up, but it just don't sound quite right. But here we go. In the case of Harrell, it was reported the news of his death was broken at Club Quarantine, got it, equating to 59 in Pythagorean, and by Derek Jones, the DJ, a man having a name equating to 59 and 76 with both Pythagorean ciphers. Also curious about Harrell's death is that it was reported he helped Sean Combs establish Bad Boy Records, equating to 59 and 76, and the May 9th news of his death came 187 days after Sean Combs' 50th birthday, celebrated on November 4th, 2019. Then right after that news, it was reported the next day Betty Wright, equating to 59, was dead 44 years after winning her Grammy in 76. In the case of George Floyd, his death was on Memorial Day, equating to 181, the 42nd prime, and in the month of May, the only month in addition to February, Black History Month, that equates to 42. And don't let it slip away that Black History equates to 181 as well, the 42nd prime, or that the killing of Floyd was on Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar's 60th birthday, and the story emerged days after Floyd's killing that she could have put Derek Chauvin away in 2006 for the wrongful killing of a 42-year-old man. Police equates to 60. Nigger equates to 42 and 60. Also, don't forget that on the same day as the supposed killing of George Floyd, a woman named Amy Cooper, equating to 42, made national headlines for choking her dog in Central Park, something that was captured on video like George Floyd's fatal ending, while at the same time she was calling the police to report a black man who was bird watching, only because she felt threatened after he asked her to leash her dog. And never mind that on July 6th, 7/6, 42 days later, the New York DA said Amy Cooper would face charges, or that the word twin equates to 42, and both stories happened in the time of Gemini the twins, and George Floyd was killed in the Twin Cities, whereas Amy Cooper was close to where the Twin Towers once stood. Even better, Steven Jackson of the NBA, who was 42 years old at the time and who grew up in Houston, like Floyd, said he was George Floyd's twin, and then seemingly in the same motion, he uploaded to his Instagram profile an image of his relative's Freemason apparel, reminding us of the killing of Philando Castile on June 7, 2015, a date that can be written 7/6 by Minnesota police, and how in the aftermath of his death, Philando Castile's uncle went on primetime television to talk about the death of his nephew while wearing his Freemason pin. And for the record, Central Park, where Amy Cooper choked the dog the day George Floyd was choked to death, equates to 119, with simple English, the same as George Floyd and the same as all-seeing eye, the latter being Masonic terminology. As for the 59 part, George Floyd's killing came 59 days before the Minneapolis mayor's 39th birthday on July 23rd, 2020, meaning he was 38 years old at the time, having been born as Jacob Lawrence Frey, July 23rd, 1981, a name we'll get to. Speaking of the number 38, for me personally, when the news of what happened to George Floyd broke, the detail that struck me first was the reported killing on the corner of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue. As you know, Chicago equates to 46, going with what we discussed prior. As for 38, as you have learned, it connects to the gematria of death, murder, killing, and RIP, each equating to 38. For a good visual, and as another reminder, seek out the movie poster for Murder by Numbers, where the letters for B are changed to 8s and the letters for E are changed to 3, and no other letters are tampered with. And this matters because murder has gematria of 38 and 83, and the song Murder by Numbers was released in 1983 by the band The Police. Not to mention, George Floyd was arrested next to a police cruiser with the number 830 on it. So, and you would only pay attention to 83 after being taken from his Mercedes ML 320, you only pay attention to 32, and prior to being kneeled on in front of police cruiser 320, 32, when Roman Catholic Church equates to 320, and Mercedes-Benz equates to 119 and 56, numbers that should remind you of the Jesuits and Vatican. And I'll say no more on the matter except that you should look into the July 17th, 1944 Port Chicago disaster that reportedly killed 320 people, most of whom were black. As we'll soon get to, Eric Garner's choking-related death that was also caused by a police officer, an incident having clear parallels to George Floyd's murder, occurred on July 17th, 2014, 70 years after the Port Chicago incident. Now, to get back on the subject at hand, the number 38, asphyxiation equates to 163, the 38th prime number, and in this case, that is what George Floyd's death was blamed on, an asphyxiation in Minnesota, on one of the 5 states having a Pythagorean gematria of 38. Those 5 are Oregon, Colorado, the 38th state, Minnesota, Louisiana, and Florida. And for some examples of their relevance, consider Trayvon, as in Trayvon Martin, a first name equating to 38, was killed in Florida and buried March 3rd, 2012, a date with 38 numerology. And more recently, in the wake of George Floyd, the story has emerged of the chokehold killing of Elijah McClain by police in Denver, Colorado, a city equating to 74, the same as the phrase "I can't breathe." Furthermore, this case was reportedly reopened because of George Floyd's killing due to the fact that Elijah was killed on Kobe Bryant Day by police using a chokehold, August 24th, 2019, the day named after the man who would go on to die in the NBA's 74th season after championing the phrase "I can't breathe." And as you might recall, Kobe Bryant had a rough time in Colorado as well, being accused of sexual assault and infidelity. To keep this riddle short, the name Elijah McClain sums to 55 and 251, the latter being the 54th prime number. Big numbers in Kobe's death, and when Kobe Bryant was accused of rape in Colorado, it was July 1st, 2003, a span of 54 days from his upcoming birthday, meaning he was 24 at the time. And at the same and the name of the building he supposedly raped the young woman in was called the Spa at Cordillera. Summing to 251, the 54th prime number. So let me spell that word. So it's Spa at, Cordillera, and Spa at Cordillera, Psalms 251, the 54th prime number. Okay? And getting back on the subject of the 38 states specifically, if you have a good memory, you might recall July 6th, 2015, emphasis on 7-6, when there were two viral stories in the news at the same time about the killing of black men by police officers, both captured on video, and they were Alton Sterling in Louisiana, and Philando Castile in Minnesota. Thus, two states from our list of 38. And if you do the math, there is a 5 in 50 or 1 in 10 chance of a state having gematria of 38, meaning the odds of two similar stories being in the news on the same day, both with states having 38 gematria, is 1 in 10 times 1 in 10, meaning 1 in 100, meaning 1%, meaning not likely. Absolutely. Keep in mind, July 6th, 2015, the day those stories were reported, was the 187th day of the year, corresponding with the police homicide code as well as the phrase Society of Jesus. And in the case of George Floyd, Minneapolis police also equates to 187. And then, as if the pattern of 38 wasn't established enough, the murder trial for George Floyd has been set for March 8th, 2021, a date, yes, that can be expressed as 8-3 or 3-8, corresponding with the 38 and 83 gematria of murder. Furthermore, on August 3rd, 2020, or 3-8 or 8-3, new body cam footage was released of George Floyd resisting arrest, and it was the same day John Hume, Hume, was reported dead at 83, having joined British Parliament in 1983. And let us not forget that it is the band The Police that sing the song Murder by Numbers that is released in 1983 and is on the album Synchronicity. In addition to the obvious murder connection, the March 8th, 2021 trial start date will be a date with 52 numerology. And that would be like March 8, 2021, you would add 3 plus 8 plus 20 plus 21, that equates to 52. Okay, and as you have learned, Minnesota equates to 52 with reverse Pythagorean, the state that hosted Super Bowl 52. The greater significance of the number 52 in this case is through the phrase that became popular after the killing of Eric Garner in 2014, and again after the killing of George Floyd. Wow. The phrase is "I can't breathe," equating to 52 with Pythagorean, proving that the use of these numbers in this way was a ritual was demonstrated through multiple stories. One was the story from May 29th, 2020, a date with 74 numerology, telling of how the rapper Trey the Truth, equating to 52, and 74 in the exact same ciphers as "I Can't Breathe," had traveled from Houston, George Floyd's hometown, to Minneapolis to pay his respects to his fallen friend George Floyd. Beyond that, the day of the news, May 29th, 2020, was 331 days after Trey the Truth's July 3rd, 2019 birthday, having been born July 3rd, 1980, with the name Fraser Othell Thompson III, equating to 331 with reverse simple. And Othell is spelled Othel. Okay? Fraser Othell Thompson III. Furthermore, 331 is the 67th prime number, a number connecting to blood sacrifice as well as human sacrifice, and reminding us of the demise of Nipsey Hussle on March 31st, 2019, another story for another time. Further proving that the number 52 was being used for ritual in the matter I am asserting. Is what happened on July 15th, 2020, a span of 52 days from the reported May 25th killing of George Floyd. On July 15, 2020, Benjamin Crump filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Minneapolis and its police on behalf of George Floyd's family. The number 52 was also the reason that on the same day, Minneapolis police released new body cam footage of the death of George Floyd, where you could more clearly hear him utter the words, "I can't breathe," as his last words, a quote that was emphasized through all of mainstream media in the July 15th headlines. Another thing to consider is that the date of July 15th can be expressed as 15-7, similar to 157, the number that much of Kobe Bryant's death was centered around, along with his daughter Gianna, where again it was reported that, like Kobe Bryant, George Floyd had a daughter named Gianna, a name that isn't at all that common. A name that isn't all that common, okay? And in terms of parallels, 52 is divisible by 26, and both Bryant and Floyd equate to 26 with Pythagorean, reminding that Kobe died on the 26th day of the year, and then on the 26th of May the world saw the video of George Floyd's demise, leading to chaos for the sake of order out of chaos. Remember, these are the number games of the cabal, and when most of us play games, we do it with 52 cards. But when they do it, they play with people. Let me read that one more time so I can have this in context. And in terms of parallels, 52 is divisible by 26, and both Bryant and Floyd equate to 26 with Pythagorean, reminding that Kobe died on the 26th day of the year, and then on the 26th of May, the world saw the video of George Floyd's demise, leading to chaos for the sake of order out of chaos. Remember, these are the number games of the cabal, and when most of us play games, we do it with 52 cards, but when they do it, they play with people. For yet another example of how the number 52 was being used ritualistically in relation to George Floyd's killing, it was reported that on July 18th, 2020, on the 52nd straight day of protests in Portland, Oregon, one of the states that equate to 38, in tribute to George Floyd, a stretch of days was emphasized in the headlines that federal police were capturing protesters by pulling them into unmarked vans. Keep in mind, Oregon is the 33rd state, and both federal and police equate to 33 with Pythagorean. And the George Floyd protests began on East 33rd Street. Furthermore, the date of July 18th can be expressed as 18-7, similar to 187, corresponding with the gematria of Washington, D.C. and Society of Jesus. At the same time, the 52nd day factors in with the gematria of government and authority, also equating to 52. And better yet, days later, it would be reported that federal police had quietly been in Oregon monitoring protesters since July 4th. Emphasis on 7-4 because, as you learned in the first chapter, Oregon is the only state having simple English gematria of 74. At the same time, it was reported that Donald Trump had named his federal police mission Operation Legend, equating to 74 with reverse Pythagorean. Now to transition between numbers, let's discuss 62, the reflection of 26, because it connects everything from the location of the incident to what the video of the killing provoked to it happening in the time of Gemini under the watch of the Minneapolis mayor in the time of the coronavirus pandemic, where many people reportedly couldn't breathe because of a deadly virus that made many require ventilators, a word having gematria overlap with coronavirus in 3 out of the 4 ciphers. To begin on the subject of 62, both Floyd and riot equate to 26 and 62. Beyond that, sacrifice and Minneapolis equate to 62 with reverse Pythagorean, the latter being the city where Floyd's killing happened, and in light of Minneapolis being considered one of the twin cities, and in astrology terms, the twins are Castor and Polydeuces, equating to 293 with reverse simple, the same as coronavirus pandemic. And as you'll recall, 293 is the 62nd prime number. And in the Bible, Castor and Polydeuces, it is Castor and Pollux, if I'm not mistaken. That's the ship one of the apostles get on, and they have the statues of Castor and Pollux on the ship. And it does mention them as being, man, dang, I should look that. Well, I'll leave that be, but you can look that up, and I forget. Just Google one of the apostles getting on the ship with Castor and Pollux. I want to say it was Paul, but I'm not really sure right now. But anywho, moving right along. For more insight on the number pairing, if you followed my YouTube channel on March 29th or 29/3, it was a day of non-stop headlines involving 293 and 62, with several reported deaths and hospitalizations in the world of celebrity connected to coronavirus, including names such as Alan Merrill. March 29th was also the day Queen Elizabeth's royal footman tested positive for coronavirus, and where Queen sums to 62. Royal footman equates to coronavirus in the same cipher, summing to 56 and 155, similar to how royal family equates to 56. Building onto our 293 list, Jacob Lawrence Frey equates to 293, the full name of the 38-year-old Minneapolis mayor at the time of Floyd's death, and I'll add that he is Catholic educated, having attended Villanova just outside of Philadelphia. Furthermore, George Floyd was reported to be from Houston, Texas, equating to 62, and reminding us that the Houston Astros lost in Game 7 of the 115th World Series and were defeated by the Nationals 6-2 on the day leaving 62 days in the year. At the same time, Houston, Texas sums to 46, matching Floyd's age of demise. For another 62, it is the state Georgia, similar to the name George, and where just 20 days before the reported killing of George Floyd on May 5th, the video release of the Ahmaud Arbery killing in Georgia. Okay, on May 5th, the video released of Ahmaud Arbery killing in Georgia. Another important word having gematria of 62 is Mason, equating with simple English. Okay, Mason equates to 62 in simple English. Okay, in the case of George Floyd's death, the knee on his neck was symbolic to the Freemasons, who have a kneeling ritual of their own. It is in tribute to Hiram Abiff, Hiram Abiff, a name equating to 62 with reverse Pythagorean. Okay. The master mason who, according to the Freemasons, built Solomon's temple and who died keeping the 3 secrets of the first degrees of Freemasonry. In the Hiram Abiff related ritual, a candidate who is going through the Masonic initiation process lays on the ground on his back, blindfolded, while his brethren take a knee surrounding the initiate in close proximity. To cut to the point, the ritual involves the story of Hiram Abiff, who ends up being murdered by the west gate of Solomon's temple. Consider the sun sets in the west, and on the date of George Floyd's death, it was reported that the sun set at 8:46 p.m. local time, corresponding once again with the detail of 8 minutes and 46 seconds on the neck. In short, this is how it all comes together. At the same time, the name Hiram Abiff equates to 55 and 62 in the exact same ciphers as Minneapolis. With regards to 55, that is the number we discussed earlier, having a great deal of significance to Sigma Pi Phi, also known as the Boule, as well as Prince Hall Freemasonry, each equating to 55. In the case of George Floyd, the lawyer his family hired, Benjamin Crump, is a member of both the Boule and Prince Hall. And in that breath, let us recall that Boule equates to 26 because the surname Crump is sums to 26 just as well. And Benjamin Crump was named as the attorney of George Floyd's family on May 26th, the day the video of Floyd's demise went viral. Further adding to the list of coincidences is the fact that the Prince Hall Lodge for Minneapolis is located a stone's throw from the crime scene at the address of 310 East 38th Street, number 224, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And the word Prince equates to 38. As a reminder, Prince Hall is a sect of Freemasonry for black men who are often entertainers, as was the case with George Floyd, who was a rapper, pornography actor, and semi-pro basketball player, as well as being a bouncer at a nightclub where Derek Chauvin, the officer who reportedly killed him, also worked. And if you saw it for yourself, and your eyes were open, you had to appreciate when the media released the image of George Floyd posing next to a Corona Light poster in the time of coronavirus at supposedly the same nightclub where he and Chauvin worked. Personally, I wonder if it is a coincidence that Corona Light equates to 59, because it does remind me that Eric Garner's family was paid $5.9 million for his wrongful death after being choked by the police, and that George Floyd died 59 days before the Minneapolis mayor's birthday. Making the chance of a coincidence all the more unlikely is the fact that the name of the nightclub the two men worked at was El Nuevo Rodeo, equating to 56, the same as coronavirus. And never mind that it was a club with a Spanish name, similar to Corona being a Spanish word. Regarding the familiar number 59, the June 4th 2020 news story about the choking of 27-year-old Patrick Carroll contributed further to the use of it. In his case, it was reported a police officer knelt on his black neck on May 18, 2020, 7 days prior to George Floyd, and the story came out of Sarasota, equating to 59, the reflection of 95. I think he probably meant the officer knelt on his neck, on the back of his neck. I'm gonna think that's what he meant. Okay, let me just put it. I'm gonna read it in the way I think he wrote. In his case, this is about Patrick Carroll. In his case, it was reported a police officer knelt on the back of his neck, or knelt on his neck on May 18, 2020, 7 days prior to George Floyd. and the story came out of Sarasota, equating to 59, the reflection of 95, the latter being the number equating with the gematria of the name of the victim, Patrick Carroll, and not losing track of the fact the word slave sums to 59, Sarasota, Florida sums to 102, the same as slavery and police. A little further ahead, we'll discuss how the full name, George Perry Floyd, also equates to 102, and what the clear symbolism is behind it. For now, I'll point out that the Patrick Carroll incident took place on May 18th, 2020, a date with 43 numerology connecting to the gematria of Florida, George Floyd, policeman, Masonic, killing, and Civil War. Excuse me. I should also note that May 18th, 2020 was a date with 63 numerology connecting to the gematria of racism. And on the subject of 63 and racism, I want to briefly discuss the fraternity Alpha Phi Alpha that claims to be the nation's oldest black fraternity, something also claimed by the Boule. They were established on December 4th, 1906, and on their 63rd birthday, Fred Hampton, the Black Panther, was murdered in Chicago, supposedly in cold blood, in his bed while sleeping by the FBI. Keep in mind, Fred Hampton sums to 177, like the Jesuit order, and his full name, Frederick Allen Hampton, equates to 110, the same as prophecy. As you know, that number connects to the height of the World Trade Centers that fell on 9/11, each 110 stories, to the gematria of Minnesota, to the gematria of Dave Chappelle, the latter being the once funny comedian who told the story of being born at 8:46 in the morning in a skit made in tribute to George Floyd. And for another 110 ahead, when we talk about the killings of Ahmaud Arbery and Rayshard Brooks in Georgia, be sure to note that their killings were 110 days apart, from February 23, 2020 to June 12, 2020, respectively. As for the date of Hampton's murder, it was the same day the rapper Jay-Z was born, who did the series Rest in Power in tribute to Trayvon Martin, the other slain Black Americans, a film inspiring the Black Lives Matter movement and the push to end racism. Yeah, right. Not by chance, the title of that film, Rest in Power, equates to 63, with both Pythagorean ciphers. The symbolism behind this number is also why it was reported after the killing of George Floyd in national headlines that Sambo's in Santa Barbara would be changing their name after 63 years, a name that is based in an Indian racial slur. Could have fooled me, because when I was a kid, I can still remember a commercial about Sambo's in Mississippi, because I grew up in Mississippi. And they had this black man just smiling, no teeth in his mouth, but he was cooking at Sambo's restaurant. So maybe that's another clue that the first people here were the Hebrews or black folks, as whatever you say. It's crazy. But I never knew it was an Indian racial slur, because they showed it. I never saw an Indian on TV in the Sambo commercial. I'm going to have to look up that commercial and see if I can find it and post it on my channel in the community area. But yeah, that was really humiliating. I like that. Why would he be on TV like that? Anyway, moving right along. As for what got my attention about Alpha Phi Alpha, it was an NBC News broadcast with an interview of Brady Bob, Bradybobb. reported to be a childhood friend of George Floyd and a member of the fraternity who attended Floyd's funeral. For the sake of moving on to more important things, I'll ignore that the name Brady Bob equates to 55, the same as Minneapolis and Boulay and Sigma Pi Phi and Prince Hall. The more important point that needs to be made about Alpha Phi Alpha is that their establishment date to the death of George Floyd was 173 days later, and Black Lives Matter as well as Roman Catholicism equates to 173 with simple English. The number 173 is also the 40th prime, and Shaun King, the leader of Black Lives Matter, was 40 years old at the time of George Floyd's death, having been born September 17, 1979. Keep in mind, this means he was approaching his 41st birthday on 17/9, something like 179, the 41st prime, which becomes all the more interesting when you recognize that King equates to 41 with simple English and Shaun King equates to 41 with Pythagorean. Also, don't overlook that Shaun King attended Morehouse College in Atlanta, the home of Martin Luther King's family. With regards to Morehouse, it equates to 119 and 43, the same as George Floyd, and Morehouse College equates to 178 with simple English, the same as George Floyd with reverse simple English. Wow. For a couple more familiar numbers, Morehouse College also sums to 74, and Morehouse alone equates to 47. I should also note that Alpha Phi Alpha was originally established at Cornell, equating to 38 and 110, the same as Minnesota, essentially showing that the universities that gave birth to these fraternities have their stamp on the George Floyd killing ritual on 38th Street in Minneapolis. Man, back on the subject of the killing of George Floyd. If you watched the video of his death, that was initially, I'm sorry about that. Back on the subject of the killing of George Floyd. If you watched the video of his death that was initially released by the media, it was just over 10 minutes in length. And within the first 40 seconds of the recording, there is something very crucial that happens. At the very beginning of the video, the person filming backs up from where George Floyd is being assaulted and makes sure to capture the artwork on the concrete structure built to hold the garbage can that is nearby. The artwork is a colorfully painted number 6. After keeping the number in the shot for a considerable period of time, around the 40-second mark, the person filming then moves closer to where George Floyd is being kneeled on. This detail matters because in the wake of the news of his killing, it was immediately compared to Eric Garner's murder in New York by police on the date of July 17, 2014, nearly 6 years earlier. Furthermore, once the rioting began on East 33rd Street in Minneapolis, the incident was compared to the rioting in Ferguson, Missouri, after the reported death of Michael Brown that also occurred in 2014 on August 9th. And for the record, both Michael Brown and George Perry Floyd equate to 201, the number of the Jesuits. And let us not forget that where the Jesuit order sums to 201 with reverse simple, the same phrase equates to 177 with simple English, much like the date July 17th or 17/7 like 177 when Eric Garner was killed. Wow, on July 17th. See, this is some this is some BS. At the same time, as you know, the number 56 is very important to the Society of Jesus, and it also connects to Black Lives Matter, equating to 56, an organization reaching peak power in the wake of George Floyd's televised death in the year 2020. 56 years after the 1964 Civil Rights Act. With the year 64 in mind, let us not forget that civil rights equates to 64. And in this case, so does the name Eric Garner and the word asphyxiation. At the same time, Eric Garner and asphyxiation both equate to 62, a number we have made our point about. And to build on the 62 and 64 list, Alpha Phi Alpha equates to both. The fraternity that had a presence at George Floyd's funeral through Brady Bob. For another 64, cigarettes equates to 64. And in the story in 2014, let me see, what was that? Okay, for another 64, cigarettes equates to 64. And the story in 2014 was that Eric Garner was illegally selling cigarettes, whereas Michael Brown, he had allegedly stolen cigarettes. And then even more recently in 2020 regarding George Floyd, he had tried to purchase cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. Keep in mind, tobacco sums to 59 and goes without saying. And please also know cigarettes sums to 163, the same as asphyxiation. And again, 163 is the 38th prime, bringing us back to George Floyd on 38th Street as well as history's past, because both Africa and Jamaica equate to 38 with simple English. Please keep in mind these are important locations in the history of Please keep in mind these are important locations in the history of U.S. slave trading, and that is much of what this 2020 narrative is about. The prophecy of Acts 7:6 and the punishing of the nation that comes after the period of 400 years of slavery that is stated in Acts 7:7. As another reminder, United States sums to 77, and in this case so does police officer. And to further comprehend how calculated it all is, keep in mind that 2020 is the year of the 59th U.S. presidential election, and on August 4th, 2020, shortly before that election, Barack Obama, a name equating to 76, will turn 59 years old. The two numbers related to the gematria of Negro, Blues, Rasta, and Slave, and reminding us further that Obama became the 44th president, 44 years after the Civil Rights Act of 1964, running on hope, a word equating to 44 and 64, and having the full name Barack Hussein Obama equating to 64, the same as civil rights. And for one more 44, cigarettes equate to 44 with Pythagorean, reminding us of the coordinates of Minneapolis and the age of Officer Chauvin, 44, and 44 as well as the fact that it was reported Obama smoked. There you go, and 44 equates to kill. Kill equals 44. Man, you should also know that there is another important cipher I have not yet taught you, called septenary. And in that cipher, African American sums to 44, shedding light on why the number has been so persistent throughout Black history. If you would like to learn the cipher, it is located for free on my website, gematriaeffect.news, along with all other ciphers you have learned about in this book. You can also read my first book, where I educate about the relevance of the septenary cipher, one worth knowing but not necessary. Moving on and further connecting the dots between George Floyd's killing and Eric Garner's was the ritualistic use of the number 99, a number that when written out is not at all different than 44, and strangely enough, when you write out 44, it has gematria of 99. More importantly, you'll recall the officer who is said to have killed Eric Garner with a chokehold in 2014 was wearing a t-shirt with a giant number 99 on the back. If you have forgotten this fact, the image is easily searched for in the information age, and it is also documented in my first book. After the symbolism of 99, let us begin with the word racism equating to 99 with reverse simple, the same as the surname Garner. Let us also recall that United States of America, a nation where we've been reminded about racism for all of our lives, was named as such on September 9th, emphasis on 99, and also has a gematria value of 99. And in the case of Eric Garner, he was killed in Tompkinsville, Staten Island, equating to 99 with Pythagorean gematria, whereas George Floyd was choked to death in front of a Cup Foods, equating to 99 with simple English. Furthermore, much of the video showing Floyd's demise, through much of the video showing Floyd's demise, you can see the gas station across the street, and on the fuel price board, you can clearly see that they are selling coffee for 99 cents, something I would otherwise say was a coincidence. Oh man. Building on the riddle of the number 99, 2 days after the video of George Floyd's death was shown on the nightly news, there was an updated story showing the AutoZone in Minneapolis burning. Not by chance, AutoZone equates to 99, and if you go back and look carefully at the footage and images presented in the mainstream, the words autonomous zone were spray painted on the outside of the AutoZone structure that burned days before the autonomous zone was launched in Seattle, Washington, in response to the George Floyd killing. That area was created reportedly after the police abandoned their precinct on June 8, 2020 in Capitol Hill, right next to one of the nation's limited Jesuit universities, Seattle University. That's something we'll touch on more ahead. And equally as important, in the wake of Michael Brown's death, the first thing to burn in the Ferguson riot was an auto parts store as well. It speaks to symbolism and the history repeating itself by the numbers. And with that said, I will end my reading of chapter 18 this session. I'm on page 304. Well, actually, let me read this last part of 304 so I can start on page 305. So right here, we'll go right here. Back on the subject of number 99, it was no accident that boxing superstar Floyd Mayweather, on his 99th day of his age, June 1st, 2020, paid for the funeral of George Floyd, having been born February 24th, 1977. And don't overlook the fact that his birthday is the 55th day of the year, the same day the Kobe Bryant Memorial took place, reminding us of the Boule and 55. Furthermore, Mayweather equates to 52, the same as Minnesota, and I Can't Breathe. Beyond that, he was 43 years old at the time, and the name George Floyd sums to 43, same as pandemic and Civil War, the latter being a topic just ahead. When we get to the new number 43 car in NASCAR, the Black Lives Matter car that debuted on June 10th, a very specific date to the ritual at hand. And for another number 99 in the world of sports and pertaining to the ritual, Drew Brees, equating to 99 with simple English, received ample criticism in the wake of George Floyd's death for offering a counter perspective to Black Lives Matter movements. Keep in mind, he plays for the New Orleans Saints, the most Catholic team in the NFL in terms of symbolism, and also reminding us that his coach, Sean Payton, caught the coronavirus by the numbers as we covered. Let us not forget, football equates to 43, tying in with pandemic, also equating to 43. At the same time, Drew Brees ended up apologizing for his remarks on June 3rd, 99 days before the scheduled start of the NFL season, September 10th. Okay. In light of the date of the apology, keep in mind racism equates to 63 and 93, and New Orleans Saints sums to 63 with Pythagorean, similar to June 3rd or 6-3. Okay, and right there I'm going to stop there, and I will be back to read later on, maybe today or tomorrow. I have to help my grandbabies today do their classwork in about an hour or so. I got to get them ready for school, and you guys have a good day. I hope you enjoy the reading. And before I get off, I will let you know how to get both of Zachary K. Hubbard's books. His first book, Letters and Numbers, you can acquire that book by visiting his YouTube channels, Gematria Effect Sports or Gematria Effect News. And in the description of each of his videos, he leaves a link for you to purchase the book, Letters and Numbers, for $5, the best $5 you'll ever spend. This book will come to you as a PDF file, so be sure you save the file once you get the email. And Zachary K. Hubbard left the copyright off the book so that you can have it bound into a book for your own personal library. You can do that by uploading it to lulu.com, and they will bind it into a book for you and send it back to you for less than $30. Or you can contact your local bindery, see how much it'll cost to have the book bound into a paperback or hardback, whatever you would like. There's over 700 pages in this book, so keeping it in the electronic file format is also great, so you can it makes it really easy for you to find information that you're looking for. Now his second book, Number Games 9/11 to Coronavirus, you can visit Zachary K. Hubbard's webpage, gematriaeffect.news, and his blog page. I always say gematriaeffect.news.blogspot.com, but you can also go to gematriaeffect.news, and I believe it takes you to the same blog page. But the first thing you'll see is the advertising for this book, and as you scroll down, it'll give you the instructions on how to purchase this book within the United States and abroad. So do yourself a favor and get these books, understand the information, and just know what is going on in this world. And until then, I will be back a little later, and thank you guys for listening. Please give the video a thumbs up if you would, and share it so that someone else can find this information and they can begin to share this information as well. Bye bye.